Okay, so picture this, right? You're standing outside a courtroom, heart's pounding, palms are sweating. You're
Wow.
about to file a lawsuit.
Yeah,
It's kind of daunting, you know?
definitely.
But don't worry. This deep dive is going to be like your own personal legal guide, walking you through every single step in the court process, from that very first filing all the way to the final judgment.
Yeah.
And to help us break it all down, we've got this awesome visual guide, right? To make sure you feel confident, informed, and ready for whatever comes your way.
You know, it's interesting because this whole process, it's actually designed to be pretty approachable.
Really?
Even if you've never, set foot in a courtroom before.
Okay.
It all starts with that initial filing,
Yeah.
which might sound a little scary at first, but just think of it like sending a really official, really detailed letter. So this initial document, it's called a complaint. And that's where the plaintiff, that's the person who's starting the lawsuit, they lay out their whole side of the story.
Okay.
But here's the thing. It's not enough to just complain.
Right.
You really got to be strategic about it. Think of the complaint as your opening argument, right? It's your chance to lay out your case in the most convincing way possible.
So you're really setting the tone for the whole thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
A well-crafted complaint, it can be super powerful. It gives the judge a clear understanding of what the dispute's all about and what you're actually asking from the court. So then once that complaint is filed, that's when the court issues a summons to the defendant.
I like how our guide puts it. They call it the defendant's wake-up call.
I love that. I love that analogy. It really captures the purpose of the summons. It's to officially notify the defendant, hey, there's a case against you. And this is super important. It has to be served properly, delivered in a way that follows all the legal rules. Because without proper service, the whole case, it can get thrown off track right from the start.
Right from the beginning. Makes sense. Okay, so let's say the summons is served. Everyone knows about the lawsuit.
Right.
Then what? Do we go straight to, the dramatic courtroom face-off?
Not quite yet. Remember, this whole process, it's all about fairness, right?
Yeah.
And giving both sides a chance to really prepare.
Okay.
So before we jump into a hearing, there's usually something called a mention date.
Okay.
It's basically a preliminary check-in with the court, just a chance to make sure everyone's on the same page. All the right documents have been filed. Both sides are ready to move forward.
So it's like a pre-game warm-up.
Exactly. Now, once we get past the mention date, then it's the defendant's turn to respond.
Okay.
They get to file their own documents, present their version of what happened, their own evidence and arguments.
Right.
So think of this as their chance to, rebut, counter the plaintiff's claims, start building their defense.
So it's kind of like a legal back and forth.
Yeah.
Each side gets their turn to make their case.
Yeah, exactly.
Seems pretty fair.
It is. And to keep things running smoothly, there's this really important step called pre-trial conferencing. It might sound kind of technical, but it's actually where a lot of the action takes place.
Oh, really? Tell me more about this pre-trial conference thing.
All right, so this is where both sides, with their lawyers, of course, they meet with the judge. They're going to hammer out some key details. They'll discuss, what evidence is going to be allowed, what witnesses they plan to call, any possibility of settling the case before even going to trial. Think of it as the strategic planning session before the big game.
Oh, okay, I see. So it's less about surprises during the actual,
Right.
trial,
Right.
and more about making sure everyone is organized and ready for the hearing itself.
Exactly, yeah. Streamlines the process, helps pinpoint the main issues, and it can even, resolve some cases before they even get to that full-blown trial stage.
Yep.
Speaking of the hearing, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. What can we expect when that hearing finally kicks off?
Well, the hearing, it's the heart of the whole legal process, right? It's where you're presenting arguments, scrutinizing evidence. This is where the judge really digs into the heart of the matter.
Okay.
Remember that visual guide we mentioned?
Yeah, of course. Super helpful for understanding how all this flows together.
Well, it's especially helpful during the hearing. It's got a clear step-by-step breakdown of how things go down.
Okay.
The plaintiff goes first, presents their case, calls their witnesses, submits all their evidence. Then the defendant, they get their turn to do the same thing. They offer their counter-narrative, try to poke holes in the plaintiff's claims. So it's all about building that convincing case.
Yeah.
Piece by piece, presenting it in a way that's clear and persuasive.
It's starting to sound a little bit like a legal chess match,
You're not wrong. There's definitely a strategic aspect to it all. And that's why having a good legal team on your side can make such a huge difference. They can guide you through the process, help you anticipate those challenges, and ultimately make sure your case is presented as effectively as possible.
Wow. Okay, so there's a lot that goes into prepping for and actually presenting your case at the hearing.
Yeah.
Makes it even clearer how important it is to be informed and prepared every step of the way.
Absolutely.
So let's say both sides have had their chance to speak. All the evidence is presented, all the arguments are made.
Right.
What happens next? Does the judge, make their decision right then and there?
Well, that could happen in some cases, but usually there's one final step, and that's the written submissions. Think of these as your closing arguments, your last opportunity to really sum up your case. Persuade the judge why your side should win.
So it's like your final plea before the judge makes their decision.
Exactly, yeah. It's a chance to tie everything together, reiterate your key points, and hopefully leave a lasting impression on the judge.
Yeah, I can see why those written submissions would be so important. It's like the grand finale of the whole legal process.
It really is. And speaking of finales, after those written submissions are in, that's when we get to the big moment, Judgment Day. This is the day the judge delivers their verdict. They've weighed all the evidence, all the testimony, all the arguments throughout the case.
Okay, I have to admit, just thinking about it is making me a little nervous.
I get it. It's definitely a moment filled with anticipation. But it's important to remember that the judge's decision, it's not always a clear-cut win or lose.
Okay.
There's a whole range of possible outcomes. They could grant what you're asking for. They could dismiss the case completely.
Right.
Sometimes the judgment includes specific orders or instructions for both sides to follow.
So it's not always as black and white as we might think.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to have realistic expectations going in and to understand, all the potential outcomes that are on the table.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to just how complex this whole court process is.
It is, yeah.
From filing that initial complaint all the way to that final judgment, every single step is crucial.
Every step matters. And it's a fascinating journey. And remember, understanding this whole process, it empowers you to approach any legal situation, whether you're directly involved or not,
Right.
with more confidence and with a better understanding of what to expect. It really is. And what's amazing is that this entire process, even though it's so detailed, it's really designed to be fair.
Right.
And transparent. It's almost like a really well choreographed dance.
Oh, I like that.
Where each step is there to make sure that both sides have an equal opportunity,
Yeah.
to present their case, their evidence, their arguments.
I love that analogy. It really highlights how important it is to understand these steps, not just for people, like going through a lawsuit,
Right.
but for anybody who wants to, understand legal news,
Yeah.
analyze current events, or even just follow a big case in the media.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It gives you the tools you need to, critically evaluate all that information.
Right.
And really form your own opinion based on a solid understanding of how the legal system works.
Yeah.
Speaking of important information, one of the things that really stood out to me from our guide was that whole thing about proper service of the summons.
Yeah.
Might seem like a small detail,
Right.
but it's actually fundamental. It's what gets the wheels of justice turning.
Yeah. Because without proper service, the court can't be sure the defendant even knows about the case.
Exactly.
And that could totally throw everything off track. Really emphasizes how crucial it is to get those early steps right.
It does. And, while we've been focusing on that whole journey from filing to judgment, our guide also touches on this concept of appeals,
Right.
which adds, yet another layer to all of this.
Yeah.
But it's really important because it provides a way to make sure things are fair and to address any potential mistakes in the judgment.
Like a safety net, right?
Right.
For those who feel like they didn't get a fair hearing.
Exactly. The appeals process basically lets higher courts review the case
Yeah.
and potentially overturn the original judgment. So it really speaks to this ongoing pursuit of justice within the legal system, making sure cases can be reviewed and, if necessary, corrected.
This deep dive has been, really eye-opening.
It has.
We've gone through, the initial filing, serving that summons, presenting evidence at the hearing,
Right.
and then finally receiving that judgment from the judge.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did.
And along the way, we learned about the importance of proper service, that structured nature of the proceedings. And of course, the role of appeals in making sure things are fair. It's amazing how much we've gotten from just one, concise visual guide.
It really shows you how effective clear communication can be
Mm-hmm.
and a well-structured approach,
Yeah.
especially when you're explaining something this complex.
Absolutely.
For our listeners who might have felt a little intimidated by the legal system before, hopefully this deep dive has given them some clarity,
Yeah.
maybe even a sense of empowerment.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Understanding the court process, it's a valuable tool for anyone navigating this, sometimes complex legal world. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with one final question to think about. Given what we've learned about how important evidence and arguments are and proper procedure in court, how might you prepare differently if you were facing a legal situation yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question to think about.
Mm-hmm.
It really does show how, understanding this whole process, it can actually be empowering.
Right.
Whether you're dealing with like a contract dispute
Yeah.
or a personal injury claim or really any other legal situation,
Right.
it just helps you, approach it with more confidence
Definitely.
and with a clear understanding of like what's going to happen.
It's like having that roadmap
Yeah.
for navigating the legal world. You
Yeah.
know the key milestones, you know what to watch out for, and what strategies can help you get the best possible outcome.
And even if you're not, directly involved in a lawsuit, just having this knowledge, it helps you understand legal news better,
Oh, absolutely.
analyze what's going on,
Yeah.
and like have more informed conversations about the justice system overall.
Totally. It equips you to really think critically about what you're seeing and hearing,
Yeah.
separate fact from fiction,
Right.
and ultimately form your own opinion based on, a real understanding of how things work.
So whether you're facing a legal issue, serving on a jury,
Mm.
or just following a big case in the news, this deep dive has given you, hopefully, the tools you need to navigate this world with more confidence
It has, yeah.
and a lot more clarity.
It's all about making this complex information, accessible,
Yeah.
engaging, and in the end, empowering.
Yeah.
And hopefully, it sparked a bit of curiosity in our listeners about the legal world.
Right.
And just all the ways it impacts our lives.
Well said. So until next time, folks,
Yeah.
keep exploring, keep learning, and remember, knowledge is power.